Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today I'm going to be making my Haagen Dazs mint chip, which is a copycat and a creamy delicious flavor of a true Haagen Dazs ice cream, but in this keto recipe it's also sugar-free. And I'm making this because I love ice cream anytime. As well, I decided to make this recipe because it's spring again and the pale green color just made me very happy. The other reason, of course, is it's my husband's favorite flavor. In this version of my mint chip ice cream, I will focus on a custard-based ice cream that is intended to be used with an ice cream machine. If you've seen my other ice cream videos, you will notice that I also have made a dairy-free, no machine version of a mint chip ice cream. Even if you don't have a machine, please keep watching because I will explain how to make this fabulous, minty, fresh tasting ice cream later on in the video. Beyond just the really great, refreshing mint taste, I think one of the other reasons you'll really love this Haagen Dazs mint chip ice cream is because the macronutrient ratio is 10.6 to 1, with 2.8 grams of total carbs, 0.2 grams of dietary fiber, resulting in 2.6 grams of net carbs per serving. As you know my routine, before getting started, I like to assemble and weigh out all my ingredients, because having all of my ingredients prepared makes it much easier to do the rest of the recipe. Because I want a really clean, fresh taste, I'm first going to remove all the mint leaves from the stems, but save your stems. I'll explain later. Now let's go to step 1. First, I put the mint leaves in a spice blender, and I'm also going to add a bit of mint extract just to enhance the flavor. And then using my little grinder, I'm going to puree to a fine paste. You might sometimes notice that your leaves are not forming a paste. So, to remedy that, take 1 or 2 tablespoons of your almond milk and add it to your spice grinder, and then just puree again. By adding this extra liquid, this will troubleshoot any problem you have in making a fine mint puree. Now that my puree is at a nice, smooth consistency, just set it aside for a moment. Here's where you take your reserved stems and toss them into the pot. The second step to this recipe is to prepare the custard base, which is very easy. But you do have to start by pouring your heavy cream and almond milk into a saucepan. Then place your pan onto your stovetop element set to low, and then just heat to a light simmer. While this cream mixture is slowly warming up, it's a good time to take your mixing bowl or stand mixer bowl and add your 6 egg yolks. Toss in your finely ground confectioner sweetener, which is just your regular sweetener ground to a very fine powder, and the sunflower lecithin. By the way, the sunflower lecithin is a good emulsifier for ice cream, but if you don't have any, you can leave it out or use an extra egg yolk powder, or a bit of gelatin powder as a substitute. The purpose of an emulsifier such as sunflower lecithin, it just helps to keep your ice cream creamier. Next thing you do is whisk your egg yolks at high speed until the egg yolks are very pale yellow and the volume has increased a bit. At this point, your cream should be warm enough to start tempering the eggs. While tempering, to prevent the eggs from curdling and to have a better control, I'm pouring the hot liquid into a measuring cup that has a spout. Then slowly pour this first cup of hot creamy mixture into the bowl, but I like to let it run down the sides of the bowl so that it doesn't shock the eggs too quickly. And I do this while whipping continuously at medium speed. Then repeat with your second cup of hot cream. And you'll notice by the end of your second cup, your mixture is nicely tempered. Then pour the remaining hot liquid to the egg mixture bowl. And we're going to transfer the tempered egg mixture back into the saucepan you used to heat up the cream in the first place. All that's left to do is to heat this custard over very low heat until the temperature reaches about 170 degrees Fahrenheit or 80 degrees Celsius. And as your custard is heating up, don't forget to stir and whisk as the mixture is slowly heating. When your custard reaches the temperature, it'll still seem a little bit runny, but please remember to not overcook this mixture because it will curdle. And what you're looking for, as you can see, is a very smooth and creamy custard. Now for step 3, which begins by preparing a nice water bath into which you placed a deep-sided bowl right in the center. In order to strain all the little particulates out of your custard, put a fine mesh sieve over the mixing bowl and pour the custard through the sieve. Discard the mint stems and any residue left in the sieve. Immediately after straining, and while your custard is still nice and warm, add the mint paste you prepared earlier and stir well to combine. And if you want, at this point, you can add the gel food color. This will give you a nicer, more minty pale green color. If you're wondering, I'm using a Wilton Gel Kelly Green food color. This gel is extremely effective, so you need very little. What I do is I just dip the end of a toothpick once or twice and swirl it around in my custard until it's the color that I want. But you don't have to add the food color. This is totally optional. Then you let the custard sit in the ice water bath. Stir or whisk occasionally until the custard is thoroughly cooled. Now I'm going to get a clean bowl and refresh my ice water bath. And if you're new to my channel, I'd like to mention that all links to other mentioned videos and some of the ingredients that I use, such as the gel food color, as well as the formatted printable recipe for the Haagen Dazs mint chip ice cream, are all available in the description below. Then all you have to do is let the custard cool in the ice water bath until it's very cool if you dip your pinky in, or more precisely 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. If you don't like the ice water bath method, you can cover your bowl with cling wrap and put it into the refrigerator. My custard has reached the right temperature, and now it's time for a second strain. Place the fine mesh sieve over a clean bowl and strain a second time in order to remove the larger mint leaf particles. And while you're waiting for your custard to cool to the right temperature, I'd also like to remind you that you should pre-chill your ice cream maker tub according to your manufacturer's directions. For example, machines without a built-in compressor will require you to chill the tub overnight. One little tip I'd like to share with you. I like to pour my cooled liquid custard into a large measuring cup. I always start the blade churning before I start pouring, and using the measuring cup, I slowly pour it into the ice cream maker tub. By using a measuring cup to pour the custard into my ice cream maker tub, it helps to reduce the mess. Then refill your measuring cup until you've poured all the custard into your tub. Put the lid onto your ice cream maker machine and set to maximum hardness if your machine has choices for setting. While your ice cream is churning, chop up your chocolate if you're using a bar, or if you prefer sugar-free chocolate chips, into the bottom of a freezer-safe container. That's all there is to do, and all the rest of the hard work is done by your ice cream maker. When your ice cream is done, ladle the soft ice cream into the container with your chocolate chips, and fold until you've combined all the chocolate chips with the ice cream. This is a very soft serve consistency, but I like it a little bit harder, so I'm going to cover this container with the lid and place it into the freezer until the ice cream is the consistency that we like. Because our home freezers are much colder than commercial ice cream fridges, and we don't have all the extra chemicals and emulsifiers, if your ice cream should freeze and become a solid, just take it out of the freezer, remove the lid, and let the ice cream rest at room temperature for about 10 minutes. Now it's time to scoop and serve and enjoy. Alright, that was the machine method. Now here are the directions to make a custard-based ice cream if you don't have a machine. Do all the steps to the point of the second pass through the sieve. Then pour your custard into a deep-sided casserole dish or freezer-safe container, something big and wide. But don't add your chocolate chips at this point. Put this container with a very runny custard into your freezer for several hours. And when your custard has become crystalline and hard, take it out of the freezer and scoop out the ice cream, putting it either into a blender, food processor, if you don't have either of those, or into a bowl so that you can use an electric hand mixer. And then whip at high speed for 1 to 2 minutes. The reason we do this step is to break up the large ice crystals, and by doing so you'll have a much smoother and more velvety texture. And then, depending on how much work you want to do and how creamy you want your ice cream, Put everything back into your container and freeze it for a second time and repeat. However, if you don't want to do a second step, just put everything into a freezer-safe container with a lid, and at this point toss in your chocolate chips and fold. And then put the lid onto your container and return to the freezer until it's the consistency that you like. If you're a real ice cream lover, I would highly recommend an ice cream machine. You don't have to have a big, fancy, expensive one, but there are really good $40 to $60 machines, and I'll put a couple links below. And should you want one with a compressor, I'll put the link to the machine that I'm using as well. And if you like ice cream, please check out the end links for more flavors. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Cheers!